Trump is uncertain about sanctions.
I don't know. I need to see it. I'll take a look at the sanctions.
Russia may disrupt the peace talks again.
Russians are concealing their document for some reason.
I'm Albina Petirniak. We will analyze the news of Ukraine and the world together. Trump does not directly criticize Putin. However, the day before, during a conversation with journalists in the Oval Office, he noted that he was surprised that there was about to be peace and all the agreements were going well until now. Suddenly, Russia doesn't adhere to the agreements but begins to strike at Ukrainian civilian cities, launching missiles and drones.
Not my war. I just want to solve the problem for people. This was not a war that was going to happen if I were president.
Right, and so, not your war, but as you try to fix it, and as you survey this hellscape of the Ukrainian front lines.
It's horrible.
And you and your team deal with a very stubborn Vladimir Putin.
Yeah.
Do you look,
and Zelensky.
Yeah. But do you look at this
Very
conflict
Zelensky too.
any differently now? Like, do you look at this and see Putin as the good guy or the bad guy?
So I've known him very well, and I went through a lot of things with him because Russia was, the Russia hoax turned out to be a total hoax. New York Times, they got a Pulitzer Prize. They have to give back the Pulitzer Prize. That's my lawsuit, and they're doing very poorly in that lawsuit. But they wrote stories about how it was true and it was false, and a lot of Washington Post also. I have gotten to see things that I was very surprised at. Rockets being shot into cities like Kiev during a negotiation that I felt was maybe very close to ending. We were going to solve a problem, and then all of a sudden rockets got shot into a couple of cities and people died. I saw things that I was surprised at, and I don't like being surprised. So I'm very disappointed in that way. With that being said, I'd like to see it end.
Here I would like to note that Ukraine, of course, is not surprised that Putin doesn't adhere to any agreements. Despite Putin's public rhetoric, Russia continues to bomb Ukrainian cities daily. During the same conversation with journalists, Trump also spoke about Joe Biden's illness. Trump, who not so long ago expressed his condolence and wishes for Biden's health, now called not to feel sorry for Biden.
Look, he's been a sort of a moderate person over his lifetime, not a smart person, but a somewhat vicious person, I will say. If you feel sorry for him, don't feel so sorry because he's vicious. What he did with his political opponent and all of the people that he hurt a lot of people, Biden. And so I really don't feel sorry for him. But
the U.S. proposal for a ceasefire in Ukraine is the best possible solution for Russia. Russia should be clearly aware of this. Acting U.S. Deputy Ambassador to the UN, John Kelly, started this at a meeting of the UN Security Council. He noted that the U.S. wants Russia to agree to a comprehensive 30-day ceasefire on land, in the air, at sea, and at critical infrastructure facilities. Kerry recalled that the United States of America immediately proposed a comprehensive ceasefire agreement. Ukraine agreed to it, but Russia rejected the proposal. Since then, we have been calling on Russia to agree a ceasefire.
The United States has worked tirelessly with both sides, seeking a path to peace. We want an end to this war. As the first step on that path to peace, the United States put forward a proposal for an immediate, unconditional, and comprehensive ceasefire. Ukraine unequivocally accepted, pending Russia's agreement to do the same. Since then, we have been urging Russia to accept a ceasefire. Following President Trump's May 21 call with Russian President Putin, the Russian Federation is expected to provide a term sheet broadly outlining its vision for a ceasefire. We will judge Russia's seriousness towards ending the war not only by the contents of that term sheet, but more importantly, by Russia's actions. On that note, we condemn Russia's decision over the past weekend to launch some of the largest missiles and drone strikes against Ukraine since the beginning of the war. This disregard for human life does not demonstrate a desire for peace. It must cease. If Russia makes the wrong decision to continue this catastrophic war, the United States will have to consider stepping back from our negotiation efforts to end this conflict. To be clear, in doing so, we would not be abandoning our principles or our friends. Rather, we would be recognizing Russia's refusal to work with us toward a desirable outcome. As President Trump has made clear, we want to work with Russia, including on this peace initiative and an economic package. There is no military solution to this conflict. The deal on offer now is Russia's best possible outcome. President Putin should take the deal. The alternative, continuing to wage the war, would not be in anyone's interest, including Russia's. Doing so would continue to damage Russia's economy, military resources, national security, and international reputation. Additional sanctions on Russia are still on the table. President Trump has emphasized from the beginning that this war was a strategic mistake and should never have happened. Time is not on the side of anyone who would prolong it. We will call on both Russia and Ukraine to make the difficult, historic decision to pursue peace.
Meanwhile, Kit Kellogg gave a big interview to ABC News the day before. Kellogg was asked what he would say to Steve Witkoff about his recent statement. And Mr. Witkoff's statement sounded like this: "I just don't see that Putin wants to take over all of Europe. I take him at his word in this sense, and I think that Europeans are also beginning to understand this. But then I hear what conditions have been agreed upon in the past, and can you trust President Putin?" To which Kellogg replied that Witkoff needs to talk to the leaders of France, Germany and Great Britain before making such statements.
I would advise Steve to talk to German Chancellor Merz, French President Macron, British Prime Minister Starmer. They see the world a little differently. They live in this environment, and it is a difficult environment, and they think they are in danger. I just met with the Finnish ambassador yesterday. We had lunch together. The Russians are building up forces on their border, and Finland has the longest border with the Russian Federation, and they are worried.
As for NATO, Kit Kellogg noted that the United States is supposedly ready to consider Russia's demand on this issue. This issue will always be raised by Russia. They are talking not only about Ukraine, they also mention Georgia and Moldova. And we say, okay, we can discuss stopping NATO expansion to your border. This is a security interest. According to him, Ukraine's accession to NATO is not currently on the agenda for the United States. And we're not the only countries that says so. I can name 4 more NATO countries that will confirm this. And for accession to the alliance, the content of all 32 countries is required, Kellogg said. While the Kremlin pretends that they need peace and are supposedly ready to talk about it, Russian propagandists clearly state that they do not need any peace. They see their own inadequate fantasies in which Russia is supposed to win, and this is all that the Kremlin regime values today.
Are we closer to peace today or not? If we had a key trend, you don't understand again. It is you who need peace. Do I need one? Do you all need peace? No, we need victory. We have a completely different task. Our task is to ensure the prosperity of our country and security for a generation to come. If for this purpose the Nazi regimes and the political elites supporting them must cease to exist, so it will be. We do not have the task of preserving the Ukrainian political nation. But they didn't talk about it, correct? Therefore, we do not need peace. That is, we do not need a dialogue with IGAT now, which we all went into. Understand? Our conditions are very simple. Our national interests must be respected. Peace at any cost. Truce. We have never said this. Not once.
Now, the question for Trump is, how can we continue to talk about peace with Russia? Doesn't all this look like one common loyalty to Putin? In the meanwhile, Russia is skillfully stealing for the time as much as they can so as not to lose Trump's favor, but also not to end this war. The Kremlin is currently talking about a top-secret memorandum that the Russian delegation is supposed to bring to Istanbul. According to Putin's henchmen, the memorandum is supposedly in the process of being developed. Meanwhile, Russian propaganda TV channels are telling us how they appreciate Trump's efforts, but everything should happen the way Russia sees it. And if the Russians had at least a little critical thinking, they would have to ask themselves a logical question. If everything were happening the way Russia wants, then why would Russia need Trump and the negotiation process in general? And since it is difficult for Russians to think critically, such a question doesn't arise. The Russians are listening to the representatives of the Russian Foreign Ministry, Zakharova.
Director of the Information and Press Department and Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova is in direct contact with us. Maria Vladimirovna, hello. Yes, hello, good afternoon. Maria Vladimirovna, look, the United States has already expressed its position on the June 2nd meeting in Istanbul. Zelensky, Ukraine are silent. They demand that we provide them with an urgent memorandum for careful study. What will we have on this, so to speak, posture of Zelensky and his accomplices? Well, you started with the position of the United States of America. We certainly follow closely and always pay special attention to all those who support peaceful efforts and advocate for a settlement. And in this case, of course, we note the position of the United States of America. But, in my opinion, of course, the position of the Russian Federation, which absolutely openly, as diplomats say, transparently stated that the second round of direct talks with the Ukrainian side, which was agreed upon in Istanbul, will be held on June 2nd, in Istanbul. The composition of the Russian delegation was also announced, the same composition of the Russian delegation, and it was said that what was agreed upon in Istanbul, the memorandum, the principles that the parties were to formulate on the Russian side, were being prepared, and, as Sergei Viktor Chalavrov, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation, said, they had been prepared. Therefore, this is what we need to rely on, and this is what we need to proceed from. Your second aspect in the question was and was focused on the position of the Kiev regime, so it has always been like that. Remember the line from the song, I will not give my yugu, neither to friend nor to foe. It seems to me that this is some kind of logic that they are actually guided by. The same hysteria, the same unconstructive noise they made that time. Remember, the main thesis was that the Russian delegation was not satisfied, its composition, allegedly, was not the same, the level was also allegedly not suitable. It even came to the word sham on the part of the Kiev regime. How did it end? They sat down at the negotiating table, and moreover, as a result of these negotiations, the most important and largest exchange of 1,000 for 1,000 took place. This is how we should treat the next wave of this very information noise. They want to bargain for something again, to attract attention to themselves again, to increase their price again, although every time they get bumps, but, apparently, they like it that way. Our position is constructive, it is open, it is directly stated at the highest level, it was additionally publicly stated so that the public, primarily the Russian Federation and the international community, understand our approaches. Maria Vladimirovna, Vladimir Medinsky receives threats, and not only to him personally, but also to his family. I would like to know if there is any reaction from international organizations and the community to these threats from Kiev. Then they will have to react to everything else that they have been called upon to respond to over the years. After all, ISAD is a peacemaker, where the surnames, names, and personal data of Russian journalists, public figures, not to mention statesmen, are entered. But even children get there, both Russian and non-Russian. They are still operating, and no one, not a single specialized organization, not a single government of Western countries, which provided either political or direct information support to this, has declared the inadmissibility of such extremist resources. We are well aware that the Kiev regime and those who stand behind it are doing everything to carry out terrorist activities. Not only in words, but also in deeds. They have long ceased to be embarrassed or somehow hide the fact that they are carrying out extremist and terrorist actions. Therefore, this is just another additional factor confirming their terrorist nature. All this talk about, you have probably heard that there is some extremist or there is a certain part of their law enforcement agencies or some near-law enforcement agencies that do not control the bank. We also record all this. We also add such confessions and revelations to the evidence base. But I want to say again, because if they do not agree with such a formulation of the issue on Bankova, they can state it directly. They can say that the Myrotfritz website and all those who were sentenced there on this site, all this refers to extremist activity, from which they dissociate themselves. Well, I would say they deny it, but given that they have staged real terror against Christianity in Ukraine, it would probably be inappropriate. But they have never said that they are against such activities. Yes, they didn't, but I think, as we repeatedly emphasized on our air on May 9, 1945, all the Germans immediately lined up with an amendment for self-dynamification. Well, apparently, Ukraine is waiting for exactly the same moment. Thank you very much. Maria Vladimirovna Zakharova was in direct contact with us. Maria Vladimirovna said that they always put on a show and once again they will try to bargain for something. Zelensky is like an orange.
Volodymyr Zelensky noted the day before that Russia is behaving very strangely in view to the upcoming second round of negotiations and the fact that Russia supposedly wants peace. It is strange not to present its memorandum and keep it such a secret. The Ukrainian leader very clearly admitted that now neither the Ukraine nor the Turkish side understands what kind of document it will be, what its format is, and what new conditions Russia will put forward. Volodymyr Zelensky added that most likely Russia has simply become unaccustomed to diplomacy.
Currently, neither we in Ukraine nor Turkey, as the host country, have any information about Russia's so-called memorandum. For some reason, the Russians are concealing this document. This is an absolutely bizarre position. There is no clarity about the format. Apparently, they in Moscow have completely lost the habit of diplomacy. They keep doing things to prove that they are the most inadequate actor in the world, but that is precisely what convinces everyone that new pressure is needed. Pressure on Russia.
The New York Times reports that the provisions of the Ukrainian memorandum are now known. In total, it contains 22 points. Kit Kellogg called them quite good and reasonable. Donald Trump also confirmed that the United States had received the memorandum from Ukraine and was waiting for it from Russia. At the same time, he urged Ukraine not to abandon the negotiations.
Kyiv's goal remains to first secure a ceasefire and then move on to negotiations on a broader peace agreement. Russia has shown no particular interest in a ceasefire. Instead, it has repeatedly stated that it wants the negotiations to focus on addressing the root causes of the war. By root causes of the war, the Kremlin means a wide range of demands, including a commitment not to expand NATO to the east. Kyiv and its allies see this as a way to subjugate Ukraine.
Ukraine will not lose the war, and talk about it is Russian propaganda. This is what Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, who arrived in Kyiv on a visit, said. Mr. Graham arrived in Kyiv together with Democrat Richard Blumenthal. During a press conference in Kyiv, Lindsey Graham said that the US Senate could begin consideration of a bill on total sanctions against Russia as early as next week. Lindsey Graham noted that despite the fact that Russia constantly talks about peace, it is simply stalling for time. I don't believe that Russia is interested in peace. As we speak, they are building up their forces along the border of Ukraine for a counter-offensive in the summer or fall. When they talk about peace, they drag out negotiations, Graham said. Senator Blumenthal is convinced that the US will impose total sanctions against Russia.
The US response to Russia's actions will be clear: 500% duties for everyone who buys oil, gas and other minerals from Russia, including China and India, sales to which account for 70% of Russia's sales volume. The EU's support has only strengthened the US's intentions to increase pressure on Putin. Arms supplies to Ukraine will continue and be increased. There remains the question, what will do those EU countries that buy gas and oil from Russia in huge quantities? And the US itself, which still buys enriched uranium from Russia, or is that something else?
In Kyiv, the senators also met with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. The Ukrainian leader posted a video of the meeting on his Telegram.
Good to see you. Welcome. Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us. We're back.
No, we're back. Happy to see you.
7-3.
Mr. President, good to see you. Possibility to come, especially now, such challenging period.
Thank you, President.
Vladimir Zelensky noted that 82 senators now support the US sanctions bill, and it is important to continue working on it.
A good meeting with US Senators Lindsey Graham and Richard Blumenthal. Thank you for being in Ukraine at a time when coordination of efforts to bring about a decent and lasting peace is most needed. We equally understand that Russia is trying to make a mockery of diplomacy. It is covered up by negotiations, but is preparing for new offensive operations on the front, hits our cities and villages every day, and refuses all ceasefire proposals. Therefore, additional pressure is needed, and I am grateful for the initiative of the two-party sanctions bill, which is already supported by 82 senators. We discussed this and other leverages that we can use to force Russia for peace. Let's continue to work on this together. Thank you for your strong two-party support and leadership in protecting life. It is only through real American engagement at all stages of the negotiations that a lasting peace can be guaranteed.
Trump himself said the day before that he doesn't know whether he will support the bill on sanctions against Russia, which was proposed by the senators. And it is precisely this position of Trump that primarily gives Putin the opportunity to destabilize the situation.
Mr. President, do you support the bill of Lindsey, Graham and Blumenthal, which provides for the imposition of sanctions against Russia?
I don't know. I need to see it. I'll take a look at the sanctions.
At the same time, the topic of the need for direct negotiations between Volodymyr Zelensky and Putin appears from time to time in the information space. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, Andriy Sybiha, stated the day before that our country is ready for direct negotiations. The best options would be a meeting in a trilateral format between Zelensky, Putin and Trump.
To start working with the teams on the format, place, and timing of the upcoming meeting at the level of presidents, that is, at the level of Zelensky, Putin and, of course, what we will welcome if this meeting takes place in a more expanded format, in particular, with the participation of President Trump.
Among other things, the minister added optimism by emphasizing that Ukraine is a leader in defense technologies, in particular, drones.
Ukraine must become more and more self-sufficient. We must develop our defense industry more and more. We already have significant achievements in this area, and in some areas we have become leaders in the world. This is if we take drone technologies, and in some areas, again, we have increased our production by orders of magnitude. Even according to some indicators, we scaled up the production of military equipment and weapons for the needs of the Ukrainian army, for the needs of Ukrainian defense, by 35 times. Now we can already produce about 40% of the needs for our army thanks to our defense industry. Thanks to our defense industry. This is an extremely high figure. We are now also producing artillery shells, including Western caliber, China-toe caliber, which we did not produce before the war. We produce artillery systems in quantities if some states with great potentials cannot produce in a year what we produce within a month.
Russia is copying the experience of the Ukrainian Defense Forces. This was stated by the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Alexander Syrsky. He noted that at the same time, the Ukrainian Defense Forces continue to increase the number of unmanned crews and develop units. The Commander-in-Chief wrote about this on his Telegram page.
Planned work on the scaling of units of unmanned systems gives real results. So, in May, more than 89,000 enemy targets were hit and destroyed with the help of drones of various types. I listened to the intelligence report on the formation of unmanned systems forces in the Russian army and the arrival of new models of unmanned aerial vehicles and ground-based robotic complexes for use by the occupiers. In particular, the enemy is copying the experience of the defense forces of Ukraine and is actively expanding its unmanned units. Therefore, we must maintain the pace of development and constantly increase our capabilities to be one step ahead. We continue to increase the number of crews of unmanned systems and develop our unmanned units. Each drone is a destroyed enemy and therefore the saved life of a Ukrainian serviceman. A special emphasis is on the destruction of enemy UAV operators and their control points. During the meeting, the development of unmanned ground systems was also considered. On the battlefield, they perform logistical functions, evacuate wounded soldiers, carry out mining, and also act as combat modules. Compared to 2024, we have significantly increased the supply of such systems to military units and increased the training of specialists in unmanned ground systems.
I take this opportunity to emphasize once again that Ukrainians are grateful to the entire democratic world, Europeans, Americans, all those who support our country during the war and sincerely strive for peace. Dear viewers, thank you for watching this video. Give it a like and leave your comments. I'll be grateful for your activity and communication. Take